Hi everyone. So today I sat down with Guru Deva. She's a yogi, a dancer, a writer, and a teacher, and she's been offering yoga trainings, retreats, and workshops. She's got decades of experience and doing some really beautiful work, transformational work with people, and also offering some healing to do with healing rays. So yeah, we sat down to hear her story and to hear about what she does. I hope that you enjoy. So welcome and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you for having me, for asking me. I really appreciate this sort of exchanges, and through the times we're in, I think we're more invited to really consciously connect with people, you know, because you don't meet people just around the corner and take things for granted. It's really sometimes to make an effort to connect and share your stories and share your insights or just your inspiration. Yeah. So my journey, it's always hard to say, when does the journey start, you know, when do you know that you're actually on a journey? So when I go back, maybe I go back to my childhood. Like so many, I know, I felt very strongly that I don't fit in. I had this feeling like, what am I doing here? And I don't get how this world works. You know, from a very early age, I felt that, but I didn't have a context for that. I didn't know what to do with this. I just felt a little odd about myself. And also I've been born with a, with a heart problem. And I had an operation when I was very young. So that made me stand on the outside even more, because I couldn't do sports. I couldn't move as much as the kids. I had to stay home and be taken care of. So I was in a very, when I was a child, a very sort of protected, but also secluded space. Yeah. And basically I wish just for me to be older. I always felt I'm in the I'm in the wrong time. It's not my time. I would tell my mom, like, wait, I don't know, when I'm 40 or something, this will be my time. Not really knowing what I meant by that. And then I guess I've been moving a lot, because of my parents. Yeah, so in my teenage years, we went to many countries. I've lived in many countries. And so I never really rooted somewhere. Yeah. And for a long time in my life, I've seen that as something I didn't need. You know, I would say I had almost like an addiction to change places, to go to different places and start anew, because that's something I knew how to do. I'd really learned that, and I wasn't afraid to do that. And a lot of people said, you're so courageous, but I would say it was more of a habit. I wouldn't say I was courageous. I learned much later what it means to be courageous. And I think that has a lot to do for me with rooting, with grounding myself, with really choosing to be here on this planet. Yeah. And so large parts of my life, I think, has been a journey of searching, but also sort of running away of, you know, why am I here? What am I doing here? What do I want to do here? And running away from that. Yeah. Being very successful on the outside. I had my own company for 15 years with 30 people working for me. So a lot of stuff was happening for me, but at the same time, I think I didn't have a sense who I was. Not really. Not really. I had just this really I would say now really story, which gave me a sort of identity with this heart operation and, you know, this being secluded, this having moved a lot. That sort of was my idea of who I am. And I think when I first started with Kundalini yoga, I mean, as I haven't really looked for it. It found me very much. I've been doing dancing. I've been doing other forms of yoga, and movement has always been important to me. So that was at a time of my life where I would say at the crossroads. You know, I just started my own company. I had a little baby girl, and my father was in the process of dying. So it was very clear that something needed to shift. Yeah, I couldn't handle my life, what I thought at the time it was about, with everything presenting itself at the same time. That's when I started Kundalini yoga. And what it definitely did is it opened up my life at the time, because my life was very, very full. And I was very, very good at handling it. Yeah, I can be pretty organized and I can do a lot of things at the same time, and until I can't. And so what Kundalini did at the time is showing me another way. So it brought me to eventually leaving my company and starting with my then teacher, starting a yoga center, because I had this strong drive, which I've always had, even as a young child, that I wanted to sort of be with people, help people, build a community and support that community. Yeah, find another way of living together. Yeah, and I've always been sure that must be possible. And so that's what I did at the time. But I guess still very much would say replacing one image of myself with another image of myself, being this yogi now. Yeah, which was good and right at the time, because it opened that door to just look at myself from another way and look at life from another way, another standpoint. And that was completely right. And that took me on a yoga journey, which I didn't know when I started this. I never had any ambition to be a teacher or any of that. I just thought, okay, let me just explore this a little bit. And then that stuff just came to me and I said yes. Yeah. And so at one point, I don't know how long I've been doing yoga. I started out my journey as a first teacher, but then also as a trainer. And still very much, I think it was also the times, you know, when I started Kundalini yoga, I see that now very differently, the people that come to us. It was a lot of people in their middle ages who sort of tried a lot of things in their life, but there was this point where they hit the wall and figured out, okay, I can't go on like this. I need to try something else. So it was a lot of, how would I say, very slowly opening people up to another way. Yeah, because we were still, you know, that was around 2000, 2002, 2003. I mean, we're living in such an acceleration that you can say, really, it was another time. It was such a different time. Yeah. And there was a lot of going back and forth, if you could do that or not, and if you really wanted to have that in your life, spirituality and so on. And I think Kundalini yoga was like, at the time, like an alternative culture. You know, there was a strong focus on, you know, how do a lifestyle, you know, you create a new lifestyle, you dress in a certain way, there's certain stuff you do and certain stuff you don't. It was like learning a new way of life. And I think it was also appropriate at the time. Yeah. So I did explore that for a long, long time, and Kundalini yoga is still part of my life and a very precious part. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to miss it. And I think it's very adequate for these times for many reasons. But then I would say where I'm now, maybe, let me think, 3-4 years ago, I felt very strongly, okay, somehow I still haven't met myself. That sounds a bit strange, but I had to look at that. I still don't have a clue who I am. Of course, you know, life is phases, and we understand ourselves in a certain way at a certain time, which is fine. Yeah. But I felt it's time to really meet myself on a deeper level. And I felt, for me personally, at that moment, this will not be Kundalini yoga bringing me there. This will not help me, because what it did, it opened me up, but it did sort of increase this habit of mine to go up, you know, to be out, and not really be here, my body, and really understanding who I am in this lifetime as this person on planet Earth. Yeah. So what really helped me? What did it really help me? A lot of things, you know. I mean, if you're ready, you know, then life just brings stuff to you. One was that I got really ill. Yeah, so it stopped me in my tracks. It was very clear I couldn't continue that way. Yeah. And the other was, at that point, that's how we met again, through the healing race, this healing modality. I started doing this, and I found that a very strong practice to meet yourself in a loving way. Not to be told spiritual is this, and you have to behave like this, and you have to do this, and all these things which were valuable at the time and really helped me to shift out of a life which didn't make sense and gave me some meaning in my life. But then came the point where I felt like, no, there must be another way, a more loving way. I'm not saying you can't have that in Kundalini yoga, but I am saying at the time that's not what was conveyed mostly. Yeah, it was more like, I'm exaggerating, there's something wrong with you, we need to fix it. Sort of, yeah. Or at least with the conditioning we all have, it's very easy to receive it this way or hear it this way. That's something wrong with you. Yeah. I guess it's never been intended that way, but that's how not only I received it, I've seen many people receiving it, and many people that trained with us. I can't count the times I said, "You're okay." First of all, you're okay before you're not. You know, I mean, and it's very hard for people to even hear it. And I think that has completely changed, and that also has changed for me. What I've learned with the healing race, and I started working with this lady, she's called Ishta, she's a channel, a master channel, is really the art of receiving. Yeah. The art of listening and receiving, and not so much of doing yet another thing to become a better person. Yeah. There's this idea, I need to improve myself. Yeah. There's something which is not right, and I'm missing the point in life, and I need to improve myself. And that brought me into a space of receiving. And that is a very powerful space if you want to get to know yourself. Because getting to know yourself has a lot to do with communication. And mostly communication with yourself. But how do you know that you're really in communication with yourself, and who is talking? Yeah, what are you hearing? Are you still hearing your parents? Are you hearing your teacher? Are you hearing parts of you that are just shut down and afraid? What are you listening to? And how can you strengthen that voice, which does make sense? Yeah. And that voice, the more it makes sense, the more you can hold a space where you can lovingly embrace all parts of you. And that I found created a very profound shift in me, and still is. And yeah, I guess that's so far what I can say about my journey. So what I want to say is that spirituality is also, we're really in a time where spirituality and how we see that and how we relate with this is changing. And I received that and perceive that as a very strong part of my journey, and also the work I'm doing, how the work has been developing, working with people. You know, when I started, it was very much like fake it till you make it, you know, just pretend, you know, put on your white clothes, be that teacher and pretend you're living the perfect life almost, you know, which put a lot of pressure. And in Kundalini, you have this thing that you say, this idea of the diamond, you know, you have to put pressure. And I believe you have to put pressure, but in a different way, in a very different way. Yeah. Because that pressure sometimes just made you crumble. Yeah. And didn't polish you necessarily. Yeah. And so in that sense, that really opened up a space. And now I'm still doing trainings, and I love that space, working with people, but it's much more actually coming back to what I always longed for since I was a child. It's much more a communal space. It's much more a space of sharing. It's much more of space to understanding what are my gifts and what can I bring into the group and into the world. And through listening and sharing, understanding who are we as a group. Yeah. So it's not this thing like hiding behind a group, like thinking, okay, if I'm just with a group, like if I'm with Kundalini yoga, you know, if I'm just part of that whole thing, my life will be in order. It is a strong community, it can be a strong community, it can really support you. And it did for many years. It was very good for me to be part of this. I don't want to put that down. But I think you come to a point, or at least I did, where you need to understand that you need to meet yourself first before you can actually join into in a group that makes sense. And then it is so enriching. And that's how we run the trainings now. So there is still Kundalini yoga in the training, but it's not a teacher training anymore. We're not training someone to be something. We're training people to be. Yeah. And I think that's important. I see also very different people. Maybe they're just different, you know, but they joining, you know, who come with a open heart, such a wish of sharing, and so many keys they bring, so many gifts they bring in the training, because they're already in that space that they understand there's something they can share. Yeah. So that really shifted. Yeah. And that's where I'm now. And the times we're in, I mean, it's so much acceleration. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I know it's not the end of the journey. Yeah. For sure not. It's yet another beginning. And I think for me, what I find exciting about life is keep on learning, keep on growing. I mean, that's brought me to this place in the first place.
That's amazing. You covered so many topics, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was like, yes, yes, yes. I remember reading an article that you wrote when you about you know, when yoga is no longer enough, about that the way that when awareness of yourself can kind of turn a little bit against you, right? And how it can kind of like start to do that kind of self-judging thing. And I was also, what made me think there, and also when you were speaking now, was how, I don't know if it's the case for everybody, if we are really raised to have a kind of a healthy self-discipline, if that makes sense. it's almost like that you are not necessarily, like you were saying, maybe leaning on the group, or that you are part of this or that, but that kind of, because I noticed it myself, maybe with other people's journeys, how you're almost scared to let go of certain structures, because then what will you be and who will you be without them? And to be able to find, like you're saying, that kind of that kind of essence within you that can stand, and then where do you join from there? And of course, it's then amazing to, you can always create something greater with others.
Yeah, I think I guess I hear where you're coming from, talking about a healthy self-discipline. I think that's really important. I agree. I think we haven't learned that, most of us. I can't speak for everyone. From the people I've met and my experience, no, we haven't learned that. We've learned self-discipline. We've learned, like, either we have the disciplined people who sort of push through life, or we have the ones that revolt against discipline. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with being free of discipline. And discipline just has a very bad PR. I mean, that's something we all want to get rid of. And a lot of people actually start yoga because they want to come out of that, what they experience as a rat race. But I think discipline has a lot to do with two things: with having order in your life. And that is super important if you want to understand who you are. It starts with order, yeah, in a sense of that if you create order within you, you will understand the order outside of you. And that, I'm not talking about society and how things are arranged. I'm talking about the universe. Yeah, I'm talking about, all of a sudden, the more you, through discipline, create, sort of bring your house in order. Yeah, and bringing your house in order for me means understanding who you are through the choices you make. Yeah, and then understanding, okay, a choice I make has that consequence. So I can change an order to be in order. Yeah. So, and as soon as you create that order in yourself, yeah, you become the consequence of yourself, you could say. Yeah. Then you start seeing the universe as an ordered and meaningful place where you have a contribution to make and where you have a place, yeah, where you have something to share and where life becomes meaningful through you. Yeah. So in that sense, discipline is important, but it's not so much, for me, it's a discipline of consciousness. Yeah, it's not so much a discipline, let me do that other kriya, let me do that other meditate. You can do that like for years and nothing changes, or a little bit changes maybe. Yeah, because they are powerful, these technologies. I'm not saying nothing. But it's a discipline of consciousness. And what it is, you know, when I see that also in a yoga training, people come, or in a workshop, you make an amazing experience. Yeah, and you're high. Wow, I feel so great. And from now on, I'm going to feel like this. Guess what? Maybe it takes 2 days. You go home, everything back to normal. Normal being, okay, I'm going to save up for the next workshop so I can feel like this again. Yeah. And what we lack is that we take this space of awareness we've been to. We have experienced that within us. That's not somebody told us about it. Yeah, talking about enlightenment and this and that. You made that experience in that moment. And the discipline of consciousness is to now tell yourself, I made this experience. From this day on, I will act and speak in a way that honors the consciousness I've just met in myself. You see? And that's mostly what we're not doing. We think, oh, it was a nice experience. We sort of put it outside of ourselves. We think some amazing teacher gave us that, and we have to go to his workshop or her workshop again to have this again. But we made that. And if you work discipline of consciousness, you have to work with a mind who is extremely obedient. You have to tell your mind, listen, that's the new consciousness we're operating from today, because we've experienced it. Yeah. And that's what I mean by discipline of consciousness. And often we do the practice, which is amazing, which opens that up, that brings us to a consciousness we maybe haven't felt within ourselves, which is new. But we don't make that step, yeah, where we honor ourselves for the experience we just had, an experience of consciousness, a space we opened in ourselves where there was possibility, there was beauty, whatever it is, you know, there was transformation, there was resolve, whatever it is in that moment. But honor that space, and then go to your mind and says, listen, this is who I am now. And we will not talk like this anymore, and we will not think like this anymore. Because the mind, you know, is extremely receptive for suggestions, but you need to know where your suggestions come from. You know, you need to be sure. Normally it's the subconscious, you know, and the unconscious being, that's part of us that is not awakened, dancing tango, you know, and the subconscious works through deduction. So if your premise of something comes from the unconscious, yeah, then it takes that as its starting point, and it's going to find everything from this lifetime and any other lifetime to prove, you know, to find a solution for you to prove that's right, you know, and you go like, well, nothing changes. But if you work with this discipline of consciousness, then that will change, and that will change you. So in that sense, I think discipline is very, very important. And I already mentioned that. I think also making choices. We haven't learned how to make choices. I would really say that. When I look at myself, also other people, of course, we're making choices all the time. I mean, we so most of us, you know, are fortunate enough to live in a country or in a space that we, you know, we can make choices all the time. Yeah. But what are these choices based? Are we really making choices, and where are we coming from to making these choices? You know, how do we know we've just chosen something? Because we're making choices all the time, any minute. You know, we're a creator. That's our essence. So we're creating every second. Yeah. But mostly we're not aware of our choices, or we think we don't have a choice, or we're not willing to look at our choices and deal with the consequences. Yeah. And choice is like one of the most powerful things we are given as human beings. Yeah. And if we start to honor our choices, that is also a discipline of consciousness. Yeah. And really start loving everything we're creating, because you can't create a wrong thing. You're creating, and your creation will show you something. You will learn something from it. You know, just I always have to think like of a little child, you know, when it goes to this little potty for the first time and then brings this to his mom and says, look. The worst thing you can do is say, what have you done? You know, I mean, it kills this idea of like the beautiful things I create. Yeah. I mean, that's really where it starts, you know. Yeah. You think, oh, something wrong here. I really put a lot of effort to get that in this potty. But apparently that's not what was meant to be. You know, it's something else was expected of me. Yeah. So at a very early age, we sort of, we either think we cannot create, we're afraid to create, we're ashamed of what we create, we don't want to look at that. Instead of looking at, okay, what am I learning from this? And honoring what we create. And that's the power of choice. And that for me is also a discipline of consciousness. And if you have a certain consciousness that you know, I'm going to choose this and not this. Yeah. And that is an effort that can be much more an effort than 3 minutes of stretch pose, and Breath of Fire. Yeah. We're sort of very willing to put our effort there, and that's good. We need to work with our bodies. We're here on this planet and we've been given a body, that's our vehicle, and it needs certain things from us. It's very important. But that's not the end of the story. And in that sense, no, we haven't. I completely agree. In the trainings we do, that's one of the most crucial things where people have the biggest, wow, that is empowering.
Yeah, and because I feel like sometimes when we're, and I also, because I was studying a bit of Ayurveda, when you're off balance, right, you tend to be drawn to the things that are out of balance, or that, you know, keep perpetuating that. And I suppose that's for me one of the biggest gifts of Kundalini has been a kind of clearing a little bit of, so that you can kind of see a little bit more, or that you can kind of like make maybe better choices in a way. And I suppose that's also where, you know, good mentors are like just like, you know, just priceless and key. Although that's also another tricky territory of how much do you listen outside and how much do you listen to yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm very grateful for the people that guided me and are still guiding me, because sometimes it's more like you hear your own voice mirrored back to you from the outside. For me, that is a really good mentor. Yeah. Not necessarily somebody who has to sort of tell you how things are done. It's more like something which, you know, someone, because he has the sensitivity and experience, picks up within you and sort of just mirrors it back to you. And you will feel if you go into resonance or not, and you need to honor that. And if you go, then there's something for you to discover. Then there's a treasure to be found. And I think in that sense, it's priceless to have good mentors. And throughout my whole life, I mean, I wasn't in the yoga then, but looking back, I think at every stage in my life, now I would call them mentor. I just had these people in my life who somehow pointed me in the right direction, or gave me a vision of myself, which I at the time couldn't see. Yeah. And that's really priceless, and I'm very, very grateful for this, that all these people who've been in my life, like angels, you know, sort of helping me along the way. Yeah.
I'm sure you're doing that for many people at the moment, and you have been up till now. Yeah. One thing I wanted to also actually ask you about is you spoke briefly about the training that you are offering. So if you could maybe speak a bit about that, because that's I think it's this whole year. Is it?
Yeah, it's whole year. We're doing two things. The first one is called Alchemy of Awakening. This is really, well, let me start in another way. I see a lot of people these days, for sure. I mean, everybody has done something with spirituality somehow. I mean, you really have been hiding on a rock if you haven't heard about it, you know, or yoga or anything. I mean, everybody sort of has met somewhere, tried it somehow, or did Reiki, I mean, something, you know, whatever it is for you. So we're not in these times anymore where we have to tease people into try a little bit of spirituality. It would be good for you. We're past that. So people somehow get this. For sure, the younger generation, they're full in it, you know. And but what I see is that people have these bits and pieces, you know, they've made experiences here and there, you know, but somehow they haven't been able to put it all together to really shift in their lives or to really awaken. Yeah, they have these short awakenings, they have these insights. It's like a puzzle, but somehow you haven't have a full picture of what's actually happening here. You know, you've tried this, you've tried that. And what I find, or what we were trying to offer, is really a process to bring these things together within you. Yeah, to create sort of like a process through a year that opens you up for yourself. Yeah, and make you understand in a way, what is awakening? What is this about? Everybody talks about it, you know, in the age of awakening, we all need to awaken and the planet is awakening. And what is that? Yeah. How do I know that I'm aware, that I'm woke up, sort of, you know? When do I know, you know? Yeah. And this year is really about that. And we have a lot of people from very different walks of life, but hardly anyone has never done anything with yoga, spirituality, which was the case when I started these trainings. It was really like showing people, look, there's a part of life which might be interesting, you might want to consider. We really be beyond that. And this is like very much honoring your own journey. Yeah. Understanding more what your own journey is and what does it mean to wake up. What is like the next step for you of wakening up, you know, make it very concrete. Yeah, because we have this idea of, I don't know, we all have other ideas what that needs to look like the day when I finally wake up, you know, but there's steps of awakening. And what is it for you at this time in your life that wants to awaken? Yeah, and that's what we're working with, really. With what is there, and you see everybody has a very different journey, but every time as a group they awaken something in each other, and as a group they really accelerate awakening for every one of us, for us as trainers too. Every time. Yeah, so it's a process of transformation, you could say, and really coming into process work, you know, where we've talked about order, where there are steps you need to see and you need to take. Yeah. And you need to understand that you've just taken that step. Yeah. So you can continue. And then we've just started. That's very funny because we did this training with a group in Berlin, and they were done and they were like, oh, we want to go on, we want to go on, we want to continue. And we thought, okay. That's amazing how we, you know, how they offer us the opportunity to develop a new program. Yeah. So we started, and we call that Alchemy of the Self. And while this first process is very much opening you up, you know, understanding what awakening is, how to awaken, and this sort of giving your life a new context in a way, putting the puzzle pieces together. Yeah. The second one is much more really like you get the tools and you work on yourself. Yeah. Both courses are mostly experimental. I mean, you have to have the experience, otherwise nothing is going to change, you know. But what we started now, the first module we called empowerment. Yeah, we've just done that in January, and is really working strongly with keys to consciousness. So we really give people experiences, we give them a frame. Yeah. And then therefore themselves sort of have to find the key. What did just happen for me? What did I just understand? Yeah. And what is the new key I can use? Yeah. And really, it's very much applied consciousness. Yeah. Because what I see, people do all that stuff and they understand it to a certain level, but how do you apply it? Because consciousness is always applied. I mean, wisdom is applied consciousness. Yeah. It's not a theory, because so and that's what this program is about. Yeah. What is amazing, so we're developing it as we go along, and I love that. I really love it. Yeah, because a lot of stuff comes together within us. I mean, I've just said we all have the background of Kundalini yoga. Then I've done a lot with Ishta, so I've done the healing race, this healing modality, but I'm also following another. I did a course in almost 4-year course, Path of Mystery, where you do activations, transmissions, and work on yourself. You really meet yourself, and you strengthen this connection really with spirit in a way which I personally hadn't experienced before. And then the other woman who is with us, she has a strong shamanic background, and Gopakash does a lot, which is my partner, which is also who's also in the training. He does a lot of work with the tarot, alchemy also, and so these things really come together, because I believe it's not sort of just taking everything, throwing it in and thinking, okay, what is the most fancy? But if you have two people, these teachings will necessarily come through you because they live through you. And when they come through a person who has experience with this, then there's a cohesion, and there is something that makes sense, and it's not just a hodgepodge of fancy spiritual practices, And that's very exciting to work in this way, and bring these things together, and also break up barriers of different practices. I remember when I started, I had a lady, a close friend of mine, who's been with the Kundalini yoga for many, many years. And then she had a big crisis, and she considered being a Buddhist. And her then teacher really stood in front of him. You cannot do this. If you become a Buddhist, you have to start the spiritual path all over again. I mean, I thought, that's really how I entered spirituality. It was very much like this line, there's nothing else, and you've chosen, and we do it this way, and that's the way, and that's really changing, and that's good that's changing. And obviously, I mean, if you work with this, you need an experience with it, but as soon as you have that, you can't help this working through you. So that's what we're doing.
Absolutely amazing. That sounds amazing. I love that you're kind of developing it as you go along, especially in the times now, which are so volatile and changing. I think no one can really predict what's coming, so it's almost just like adapting to whatever is needed, right? And just a few things that you covered. I always found I think many people would find that group work is so amazing to when you come together with your own individual journeys, and then you're all going through your stuff, and then maybe you come to a point of sharing, and then you realize how much you resonate with so many people, and how healing that is within that space where you just kind of like open up, and you like the intimacy also is something that is really hard to come by, I think, in the world where like this kind of level of intimacy, I think, that you get in these kind of trainings, which is just like mind blowing. It was always mind blowing for me, and then I always found that group space, the community, is always such a hold. Like, I think just even being around people and just being kind of being just okay with the way that you are with all your stuff, that in itself is so, is so kind of like, I don't want to keep using the word healing, but
Yes,
it is, and so it's really quite amazing what these trainings can do. And I think one of the other things I wanted to mention was also the fact of how I think a lot is said, like, you hear a lot of wisdom. One hears a lot of wisdom, especially if we are in these circles, and I mean everywhere. But I always find that it's like it's so when it's said at the right time for you in the process. You could have read it in a book, but then when you're walking in that dark place or in that tight hard place, then all of a sudden it's hard to remember those things, and then you just maybe need someone just to say that one thing to you, or just to have that one support, and it can change everything, you know. So I find that that's also something that's yeah, when we are speaking about these spaces of mentorship or going through trainings, I think that something that I've found to be so invaluable.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's really the power of the group. I mean, I know that from my trainings, and I see that because you go into relationships, which mostly, even with good friends, you know, you've known maybe for many years, you know, outside of this context, you hardly find this intimacy. And I believe really in the future, we will find, we're already finding, you know, new ways of being in community. Yeah, and that's very, very important. I've also been called, and I will just give a shout out and we see if someone wants to join, but I feel like I just want to offer a sharing circle. Yeah, I remember when I started, it was always part of the training, but it was a bit like the stepchild. Okay, we do some sharing, you know. But I would say nowadays, this is like, I don't even want to call it training. It's just a practice of consciousness. Is really, you know, what we're meant for, to share.
And support as well.
And
Yeah.
support each other.
Yeah.
And I think around the sharing circles, we can learn so much how to support each other, how we can do that. And I know when I'm part of a sharing circle, just by people being there, listening to you, you know, and holding a space for you, and you talk, you will understand yourself better after you've spoken. Yeah. And words may have come out of your mouth you didn't know. Because it's just the energy of the group that facilitates, let's say, this consciousness to come in, and that's beautiful. Yeah. And I think, you know, just by being in a circle and sharing circle, you can go through a big transformation.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea for people that are maybe not in trainings, you know, because it's also, you're not necessarily going to stay in training all the time, and it's just kind of continue with that support. And yeah, often the hard stuff hits a bit later on, you know. Sometimes right in the beginning it's like, woohoo, yeah, and then later you're like, whoa, I'm in the mud, you know. However deep, you know.
It's like you know, it's like a relationship, like a love story, you know. There's the
Yeah,
honeymoon, and then yes,
exactly, and then
day where you think, how did I end up with that one? You know?
yeah, and then it's amazing, and then it's, yeah, it goes through its motions. Yeah. And I saw that you were doing this, so the first one was in January now, and it was this intensive energy management and self-care. Was that it?
Yeah, it was exactly, yeah.
That one really resonated with me, and I was like really pulled to it as well. Is it possible to do like modules on and off, or is it like
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
cool.
Yeah, we have a group of people who sort of, I guess, they will go through, but we want to open that also if people want to join for one module, because I think the times are over. You know, we all have a certain thing we need to work that with this moment, and that's
And that
fine.
one, yeah, that one for me just really resonated with energy management. It's something I suppose that just, maybe that's just where I'm at. But this kind of energy management thing is huge, because it's also, we're all so different. And there's this thing that on the one hand we're told that we can be anything we want to be, or that we are, you know, infinite. But we come with a certain personality or an energy personality, or, you know, and how to work with it the best way to get the best out of you, you know. So yeah, to really kind of apply it to you, and then to have that, you know, that mindset of, okay, I'm infinite, you know, the potential is infinite, but like how to really maybe work with it, that it's not just
Exactly.
I can just do whatever I want, because you're gonna kind of either burn out or potentially, yeah, I mean,
You will make an experience, but yeah,
sure.
you honor that. But yeah, what I see is when people come to trainings and life opens up, you all of a sudden get like, wow, wow, now my life is going to change. And it will. That's right. And it's a moment to be honored, and it's a precious moment. You realize that. Yeah. But then our mind is very tricky. Our mind can, in an instant, can envision everything. You know, it puts you into a future where there's just roses with your ideal partner, and whatever it is for you. You were in the country, you always want, you know, a lot of whatever it is for you, or be a monk, or I don't know. Yeah. And then we think, because we've seen that with our mind, it needs to happen. And we're very, very disappointed if then we go out into the world, say, after all this yoga, but still happening for me. Yeah. Because that's not how it goes. Yeah. You still have to go through the motions. We're on planet Earth, you know, we're working with matter. And of course, we can work with matter from the consciousness. But, you know, I have people who have all these ideas and they're going around in their mind. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? I said, you know, it's like someone who wants to win the lottery, but didn't even buy a ticket to get in, you know. I mean, I said, do a step. Just do a step in that direction, you know, like you're doing this now. I mean, you can dream about that for years and think, yeah, is it really what I want to do? Do I have a time to do? There is a moment where you just say, okay, I'm going to do that. Yeah, so that is very, very important to understand. It's there's one thing to have a vision, and there's another thing to make it happen. You need to hold on to this. You need to work with an intention. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're not doing the work. You will still need to do the steps, but as soon as you have a vision and you work with an intention, you have a guiding principle where you put your energy and what your priorities are. And that is very, very important to stop exhaustion, because we're fighting so many battles, mostly within ourselves, which are so exhausting. Yeah, that is so much more exhausting than what comes from the outside. Yeah. And in the times we live in, you know, you turn on TV and you hear the latest news. I mean, I don't know about you, you can be completely exhausted and you go like, oh, what do I need to do about this? I mean, this can't go on like this. I can't just be sitting here, you know, I need to take responsibility, and you're losing yourself in this. So it is very, very important to work with intention, yeah, as a first step, and then do the steps. Yeah, otherwise you will be just hostage of a vision which gives you some hope in your life but never brings you anywhere, you know, where you cling on to when you're exhausted again. And I find first of all, you sort of have more energy, more directed energy when you work with intention, yeah, and vision, that you have a direction, because that's what power is, you know. I mean, you have to gather power, yeah, and then you have to direct it, yeah, and then the power that is always there, or the resources that are always there, they can work with you. But they need to know where you are. You know, they need to be able to reach you and flow through you. It's a consciousness, you know? And it takes the groundwork. You need to do the steps on the ground. And the beauty is you can always adjust, and you must adjust, and you will adjust. But the learning happens through the steps you take, and not in your head. And that is very, very important.
Yes. I'm just thinking, and my mind was just going now into ways of just, even I was thinking, there was some time that I was, for example, like I had maybe an issue with this food or that food, and I realized how you keep going back and doing the same mistakes, you know, and then how I had one or two things that I knew I should actually cut out, and how much energy my body was taking just to keep balancing, you know, because I was just making those, you know, that, and it's just like accept that this is not working, and then, you know, but it has, I think, also to do with a resistance to change, which I think is the same thing when you were saying how we sometimes learn things or have an experience at a workshop or somewhere, and then we're not really making the changes, and or making, how does this really affect us in our life? And I think it's that also, that willingness to really make those changes and just accept it and take that next step, you know, and not keep going and then feeling like I'm doing a lot of work, but actually you are, but like in the same space.
Exactly. Because, you know, that's what I remember when I started Kundalini yoga. I started that exactly from the same mind space I've always been in, like a workaholic. And then I would put it on Kundalini yoga.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would do a lot of, I didn't have a problem with with discipline, you know. I mean, we sort of bring to the table what we bring.
What were
And
you doing?
that's absolutely okay.
Yeah. What? Because you said you had a company. What were you doing then?
I had a public relation communication.
Yeah.
I did a lot of work for. Funny enough, I never thought I would be doing this, but I worked for big tech IT companies and automotive, and I did actually a lot of internal communication.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
Working with people from all, you know, different departments and bringing stuff together, and a lot of strategic communication work and working with people. I just love people. So that's, I think, something, that's been there all my life, actually.
Yeah.
I've been sort of in a hub and people around me in one way or another. And I had the privilege to somehow, serve as a connector of sort of, you know, and I've really experienced that as a privilege. And I love working with people in that way, bringing people together. And
Amazing. Yeah. It seems like that. Like they say that a lot of the things that you do in your life, you'll always kind of use or parts of it, you know. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
That I think is also really important, that people remember that they don't think, you know, I'm doing yoga or whatever I do, and the other stuff will never be lost, and it's always been precious.
Yeah. And do you, like, now, do you, for example, practice yoga still, or what is your kind of practice?
Yeah, it changes.
Yeah.
I do practice every day. I practice every morning.
Okay.
And I do meditate every day. And what I do these days, how would I, it's a pretty free practice. I've been to several workshops of a man, I can highly recommend him, Daniel Odier, he's called. And I would say he has a tantric background, and a lot of people then go like, I don't know, naked sessions in the... But that's not so much it. There's a massage part of it also, because it's very much coming back into your natural state, also in your body. And it's beautiful. How can you create this intimacy with yourself and someone else? Really beautiful. It's a very sacred space. And then there's the sort of, I would say, free dance. You know, he practices Tandava. I don't want to say that I do that, because it is a huge practice and for many years. But I picked up stuff from being in these workshops, and it's a very free practice. You basically you move quite freely in the room. You work a lot with your arms, but you work in the space. You're standing and you move slowly, like you almost, and what holds you is your breath. You're really deep. It's a very deep breath, and then you just move in the space. And you can do that with music, really any kind of music. You can do that with hard rock, you can do that with tango, you can do that with spiritual music. You can do that in silence. There's no wrong music. That's also what I love about this practice. And And that's what I'm doing every morning.
Amazing.
Yeah, at least half an hour. And I'd like to go back to 1 hour. And I guess as soon as it's warm outside again, I want to do it outside, really standing on the ground with my feet.
Yeah.
And I'll come whatever comes, you know, if sound comes, if singing, then that's what it is. Just incorporating that. Yeah. And I also do certain meditations. I'm following another course where where I just have a whole meditation practice I do every day, which I love, because I mean, from Kundalini yoga, of course, I mean, we know that line, don't we? The spine, very, very important. You know, that's the pathway of Kundalini energy. And we work very much like we have Mula Bandha, so we have the root, and then we bring it up here, you know, consciousness, crown. What I love with this practice is that we go both ways, you know, we go up and we go deep into the earth. And that has changed a lot for me. Yeah, this contact with the earth, really fully, deeply anchoring into the earth. And so this is something I would recommend people really to do, to anchor into the earth. Yeah. And I also...
It's a specific meditation practice?
Yeah, it's a specific meditation practice where you work through the chakras, but not only 7 chakras, but you have 12 chakras, and you work up and down, and you really let this, you know, the earth energy and let's say the from the source of that energy move within you. Yeah, and you're holding both these energies, and you're understanding that you're this living light and love, you know. And it's a very powerful practice. And the other thing, I would say this anchoring into the earth is really, really important. And also what I miss sometimes in Kundalini yoga is that we stand more on our legs.
Yeah, okay.
It sounds a bit silly, I know. Are we standing on our legs the whole day?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. But I feel that is really, really important if you want to root within yourself and on the earth and in your body. I find it gives you not only a stability within yourself, but really also opens your pelvis. And for me, that's a center of joy and creativity. And there's a lot of stuff locked there, yeah, which I feel is really calling us to be freed up. Yeah. And I feel if you open your pelvis, it opens, for me at least, and I've seen that with many people, it also sort of brings a joy to your heart. Yeah. And then it's not this, oh, I must and I should and I must open. That's the other thing. I must open my heart. Guess what? It will not open. I must, you know. And how can we find this loving care and for ourselves? Because self-care, as we see now, I mean, is really so not a luxury. And this time you really need to find some practice for yourself, whatever it is. Yeah. It doesn't matter, but find something which keeps you sane and something which connects you with yourself and something that balances you, as you said. You really, because I would say really every day you have to rebalance. Every day. You can't say, I got it, you know, and then I'm going to go with this recipe now. Times, you know, we're really asked to develop that sensitivity, like in every moment we have to rebalance. And rebalancing is an alchemy. Yeah, it's alchemy. I mean, there's always something that wants to go, to dissolve, and something for a short moment that wants to be crystallized as something we understand. And then we want to hold on to it like, no, I got it, but then it needs to go again. And something else wants to be understood. And we will take the essence of wisdom with us. That's the process, you know. We will absorb that, but we mustn't hold on to like as a success recipe or recipe for success, because as soon as you fix yourself, coming back to empowerment and exhaustion, that's the most exhausting thing you can do. And you want to hold on to that one thing that at one point in your life worked for you.
Yeah.
And that's not how life works. Yeah, I see that also with the training. You know, last year we went, that we were fortunate enough, that was the period when it opened up with the whole Corona thing in the summer. We could go to, what's it called in English? This is Ticino. It's in the south of Switzerland. Yeah. So we went there on a mountain, super beautiful.
Yeah.
And people now, they still say, I want to go back to this mountain. And I said, that's fine. And that's a lovely mountain. I'd love to go back too, but don't expect that you find the same did last year, you know. And so yes, so I think we need to keep on moving and understanding that we need to balance in every moment and find a practice that allows that for us to happen in a loving way, in an embracing way, really embracing more and more who we are and our journey, because there is no wrong journey. You can't get it wrong. It's more understanding what's happening for me. Yeah. And I feel with this practice, it really gives me a lot of freedom in movement, in thinking, and yeah, and I perceive that as very precious. Yeah.
Yeah, those practices sound beautiful. I love the idea of sort of just moving and dancing as a practice.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's so embodying, like, and for me also just, you know, when we do like, for example, some warm-ups in the beginning, like the Sufi grind or something like that, for me, that's always like a moment to really feel like, how am I doing today? You know, I tune into myself a little bit maybe before, or but that's such a, in that movement sometimes is when you kind of really also then start to feel, oh, this is okay, that's not okay, or it's, yeah. And then someone, I've also heard that, I mean, dance in general is another way of raising the Kundalini, apparently. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Shiva was the first dancer. I mean, he's the first yogi. I mean, yeah, he's dance is a very vital. I mean, I've always loved dancing my whole life, so
Yeah.
for sure that's something I'm drawn to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's many.
I feel there's a big link there for you. And I'm also really resonating. I think many in the world are really resonating with that grounding, that necessity for grounding and
Yeah.
embodying and grounding into the earth. I think that's really like a big topic at the moment. Yeah. And also you mentioned about the heart, where you can't just like kind of jump into it, right? And I love what you were saying about the pelvis as well, because I feel like absolutely, I think I went through like quite a big like sort of creative unblocking, and I didn't. It's amazing how when you're blocked, you don't realize that you're blocked, you know, or sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
and then when it's unblocking, you're
Yeah.
like, what's happening to me? Like, how is this even? And you can't even believe that it's, you know, and then yeah, you can't even believe how differently you can kind of be, or that how locked up you were, you know. But this that you mentioned about the heart, which I kind of wanted to touch on, because you guys, your website's name is Heart First Yoga, and yeah, I love that. And yeah, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about that. This kind of, you know, putting the heart, I mean, in front of, you know, anything else that we do, and just kind of with the name, I suppose, the inspiration for it, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say if I sum up my journeys in this lifetime, for sure. I mean, for many people, but for me, sure, it's a journey into the heart. It's really this, you know, if you want, I'm born with a broken heart, which needs to be mended. Yeah. So that's really like, you know, where you're most broken, that's where the light comes in. And so the heart is always been a place for me, which for a long time I didn't trust. Yeah. I didn't trust. And at the same time, I had a lot of people telling me, you're such a warm and heartful person. And I couldn't make sense of that. Because that's the one place I didn't trust in myself. Yeah. And I think the journey of the heart, most of all, for sure for me, and I'm still in that journey, is a journey of self-love before you can. I guess we all want to give love. We all want to receive love. But it's like with the body, you know, where you said like, we don't know to what extent we're actually blocked. Yeah. We don't know to what extent we block ourselves from receiving love. That's really something I discovered the last years. I'm still in the process of discovering how deep the resistance can run to receive love. Yeah, and for me, that is the journey into the heart, and it starts with self-love. It really starts with self-love, because the moment you allow yourself to open your heart to yourself, this is such a beautiful moment. It becomes very easy to open the heart to what is, and that's really it. You know, it has a lot to do with acceptance. Yeah. And the heart really is a portal. It's a portal to consciousness. Yeah, it's the seat of your consciousness. Yeah. And in that sense, the heart space is so much more than our physical heart or the chakra. It's really a portal to, you could say, the multidimensional being that we are. Yeah, or the multidimensionality of everything, to spirit. Yeah. To wisdom, to consciousness as such, that all works through the heart. So and I believe as a humanity, we're moving into the heart, we're making that journey. Yeah, we're moving into the heart, living from the heart. What does that actually mean? And
I
how
was
does
just going
that
to ask you
feel?
that, you know, like what does it mean for you, like in a visceral way, you know, like
What does that mean? I can feel it, I can sense it, if I'm there or not.
yeah,
It's a visceral feeling.
yeah.
And when I'm there, everything relaxes. There's not so much to understand, nothing to be impatient about. I can feel how I can. I receive knowing. I receive everything I need, basically. If I'm there, I can feel this. You know, there's an inspiration, which will bring things into motion, into action in my life. I can be completely open to others. You know, I can just listen. Yeah, it's really a visceral feeling. I can completely feel when I'm in my heart. It's a different quality of living, different approach to life. Yeah, there's a joyfulness. Yeah, there's peace. There's deep peace. There's not this feeling I still need to go somewhere. I need to do something. Everything is sort of like, and there's an innocence. There's lightness. You know, there's this quality also of a child, like, oh, this moment is completely new, you know, and let me discover this moment. You know, when I'm in my heart, I can stop on the street and I'm gonna look like on a little insect on the floor. So I will take the time. You know what I mean? All these things just happen, and I can be sure this will lead me to something else, and all these things will make sense, give meaning. You know. Yeah,
So the
that's when I know
connection,
what yeah, it
yeah.
is connection with everything. Yeah, starting with connection to yourself. Yeah.
Do you think that we can kind of stay in that space and exist in the world as it is
I
now?
it's practice, and the more you practice, I find I can't always do it, but and sometimes I forget. the more you practice, the more you can choose to go there. And then it's, what I also love is, which I also learned from Daniel Odier, he talks about micro practices as a way of applied consciousness. He doesn't say that in reference to the heart. What he says is like, okay, just decide to be conscious now of this moment, and just for a minute. But also decide that you're not conscious anymore. Yeah. And that's very interesting with the heart also in general. I find we can sort of decide, okay, I'm going to go into the heart, or I'm going to be conscious now, but then we lose it. We miss the point when we're not there anymore, or we miss the point when we're not conscious anymore. We can easily decide to do that. And that's why I find this micro practice is so interesting, that he says, okay, just go there for a minute, but don't miss the point where you also decide, okay, I'm letting that go for now.
That's hard. It's like noticing when you're falling asleep.
Exactly. Because we sort of manage like, okay, I'm going to go into my heart. But then, oh, I'm somewhere completely different. How did that happen? Yeah. So I love this idea of this micro practices, just to say, okay, just do it for a minute. Just do it for a minute, but then also really consciously go out of it. Consciously say, okay, I'm not focusing on that anymore. Not saying go out of it, but I decide to take the focus away, but do that more often in your day. Yeah. Because otherwise then it gets this thing like, oh, I'm not in my heart again. And then, the one thing our heart really teaches us and also wants from us is gentleness. Yeah. And nothing forceful. This thing like, open your heart.
Yeah.
Is it already open?
Yeah.
I mean, you can just start a communication. Just imagine it like a flower with many petals. And like a flower, sometimes it doesn't fully open because it's not the time yet. And that's okay. But there's one petal, feels the sunshine and it's really warm. And it feels like, why don't I open up a little bit, And then the next one next to it, hey, what are you doing? I'm opening up a little bit, It's really, find a picture for yourself. I find that pictures really help because they convey, for me, they convey a gentleness, and it's not this mental concept like I need to open my heart, because you have a beautiful picture, and that helps me. Yeah, but there's not one way, to do this.
But I like what you said.
Yeah. Just one last thing. I have a book, I can't remember now. It's also called A Way into the Heart from, what's his name? I think he's called Melchizedek or something. He's pretty well known. An interesting guy. Works as a Merkaba, he was the light body. And he says, I don't know if it's true or not, that there's two ways into the heart. And he sort of links it to male and female. And he says, a woman, you can just say, now go into your heart. And she will go. And a man, I can't repeat that back to you. I don't know that by heart, but there's a whole process. Like you go here, then you do this, and then you touch on this, and then you do this, and you end up in the heart, and it works. Yeah, it's very interesting. Why am I saying that? And I'm not even sure if it really belongs to gender. I haven't tested that. I'm saying that to also free yourself of the idea that there's one way to be in your heart. You can find your way, how you can enter it,
Yeah, that's lovely to maybe get to know your way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get to know that path. And but I like what you said about self-love being the first step, because I feel like with that comes boundaries, which I think are so important when it comes to kind of opening up. And yeah, I've seen myself included, like people getting hurt maybe with just kind of going yes, and then actually there's boundaries, and there's you kind of need to be the order like you were speaking about in the beginning. And also, I mean, I think there's some amazing also just research being done on the heart at the moment. I mean, I know that there's this institute called the HeartMath Institute,
Yeah,
and some interesting things going on about the how the heart has its own sort of like nervous system and all of that. It's actually getting quite interesting. Yeah, fascinating new studies of what's coming out there.
absolutely. I mean, I think it was also the HeartMath Institute that found out that actually the heart sends more information to the brain than the
Okay.
brain to the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting if you think
Yeah.
about that. Yeah,
That is. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I suppose similar to how they're doing all this research with the gut, it's another big center.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, if you wanna or someone wants to sort of work more with the Heart Math Institute, they also offer a lot of meditation and very simple practices how you
Okay.
can connect with the heart. Yeah, what like a very simple thing if people find it difficult is just put your hand on your heart, because the heart is related to your hands, to your arms, and to touch. Yeah, and I find, and I've seen that with many people, it can help you to connect to the heart if you just put your hand on it and then breathe. And you really have this picture of allow my heart to touch my palm and my palm touches my heart. Then really a communication starts. Yeah. So it's not so complicated. There are many small ways. Breathing. Simple, but breathing. Yeah. It's music, beauty, whatever it is for you. And then remember that, be aware that, okay, this helps me to be in my heart.
And also, I feel like coming back also to that when we were speaking about energy management, I feel like it's just a really efficient way of managing energy, to be honest, because I feel like, especially when it comes to like dealing with people, there's so much of this kind of like back and forth, or you did this or that, or and if you just come into your heart, everything kind of just clarifies, and then you just kind of
Absolutely.
need to just say one thing, oh, and or even just understanding someone's perspective, done, oh, and then it all just goes, and it's just,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It brings peace. It just brings deep peace. As we know, if you find a peace inside of you, because we ourselves, like in ourselves, are the biggest battlefield, very often, then you will find peace outside, or yeah, things fall into place, because the heart is such a vast space. The heart can hold everything. I think we start out with boundaries, and I think it is important to learn about boundaries if we haven't learned that. Yeah, it's really important to understand that, because that helps us to come out of this let's say conditional love or attachment, like where we disrespect or dishonor ourselves because we somehow need to reach out. So the boundary, I feel, helps us to really viscerally feel that's me. That's me. Yeah. But I think then when you work with the heart, that is a different step. At one point, and that's the beauty of the heart can really hold everything. Then you can open up again without losing yourself. Yeah. You could say you lose yourself in your heart, and the part which you lose is the part that sort of has this need to assert itself in a certain way, and have certain opinions about certain things, and that's when you drop into your heart, and it can hold all these wounded parts of you. And in that sense, you don't need to assert these boundaries so much anymore, but that takes practice. That really takes practice. So a first step is, that's very important to establish, okay, this is me here. What do I really need right now? And where do I have to say no right now? But the heart space is really the space where everything can be, everything. Yeah. And that's why, like you said, it gives so much clarity. And yeah, I find so much peace, yeah, and so such a deep connection, yeah.
And just, yeah, simplicity.
Yeah, it's simplicity, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, so I really loved that's kind of what you guys are calling your website, or just generally kind of where you're coming from. And yeah, I really, like you were saying, this is the times that we are living in now, and I'm like, fast forward, you know.
Yeah, we're learning. We're
Yeah,
learning.
we're
Yeah.
learning. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the beauty, you know. I mean, we're living in a polarized universe. That's just how it works, you know. We have polarity. But polarity doesn't mean duality. That's what our mind makes of it, you know. It always brings us in this position. I have to choose fear and love. But you know, when you're in your deepest fear, you're probably so close to love that you've hardly ever been, because they're just polarities, you know, and you can move from one spectrum to the other, but they're one and the same thing. Yeah, and that is so important to understand, yeah, because we're beating ourselves up of, you know, not being that. And the more you allow this, the more you allow that feeling, what you're feeling in that moment, it will take you to the place of love. Yeah. And I think really we're also talking about the heart. We're really asked to also work with our emotions, feelings in a new way. Yeah, I can see that so many people are afraid of what they feel. Yeah, that we have a certain idea like what we should be feeling or what we want to feel, and we do everything to feel that. Or we're running away. Like, what am I actually feeling right now? You know, and allow ourselves to be touched by exactly that. And that's our way in. That's not the thing that is keeping us away from everything, but that's our way in. Sorry, I have to, this is going. Okay. And allow yourself to feel things which maybe you've never been able to feel. Yeah, or never had the capacity to hold within yourself because it was too much. You were overwhelmed. Yeah. And I believe that's very important to access the sensitivity which we all have. Yeah, that's our way in. Yeah. So yes, so if people, I remember when I started yoga, I had this lady always said, okay, now breathe and feel what you feel. I was like, what a stupid, I remember when I said, feel what I feel. And I think, actually, she got a point. Do we really know what we're feeling? You know, feel what we feel is, yeah. And that takes and that's the beauty again of Kundalini yoga, any kind of practice. You need to develop the capacity within yourself, that you have a stability within yourself, that you can hold this. You can hold yourself in this, what wants to show, unfold in you and transform ultimately. Yeah. And that's a capacity we need to develop. It's not necessarily something we know. I see that also with people we do meditations with, and they all of a sudden have sensations in their body they've never had before, and they get really nervous. Oh my God, I did something. What's this? What's this? I feel like my you know, like a balloon in my belly. And like, what people feel all kinds of things. And we get so afraid. I said, embrace, it's beautiful. You're coming alive. You're feeling something which maybe you've never felt before. But now really investigate, what is it? What is it that wants to go in communication with you? Yeah. And usually our first impulse is to sort of, not maybe even consciously, but our whole system is geared to stop that. Yeah. And I did, maybe that's another last practice I want to say. I did it with a friend of mine, and we both, we've been doing yoga and other stuff for a long time. We know a lot of meditations, we know a lot of stuff you can do and processes. And we just met for a feeling session, and we helped each other to feel. So what we did is, she said, okay, just start breathing, close your, where are you feeling something? And I said, oh, there, okay. Well, then just stay there. What are you feeling? And then really not like a concept of your feeling, already like an interpretation of your feeling, like really learning to sense, what am I feeling? What is the sensation in my body, It was an amazing journey. So we did that. She did that maybe like an hour with me. I felt like a complete yoga training. I've gone through an amazing transformational process, So this is powerful. Sometimes it's really that seemingly simple stuff, because that's how we made as human beings, we've got it all. We just need it, or we allow it to move in us. Yeah. And then there's a wisdom I could see, as soon as you allow something which starts out sort of like an irritating emotions when you and you feel into it, it more and more becomes like a visceral sensation. And then and you observe it with your consciousness through the breath. Actually, the breath will help you to observe and will carry your consciousness, and then it moves, and it will just become as big as it needs to become to release the message for you. And then it's not there anymore, that feeling. It will transform into another feeling which you will feel. Yeah. And it's amazing, this emotional journeys, these feeling journeys. I can highly recommend that. Yeah.
Wow.
But it takes practice. We did that with our people. I want to come back to it. When we were in Switzerland, and we put them into couples that known each other so there was an intimate space. They found it very hard to do, very challenging. I see you all talking like crazy and explaining.
Oh yeah.
You're not feeling. I can see that. You're not feeling. You're thinking your feelings.
Yeah. And also just escaping into that space of even just, if you're doing that with somebody else, I think just that being with somebody else in that space of not doing is already, it can be uncomfortable. It's the same as like eye contact or something, with people for long periods of time. It's like, can be pretty awkward for some people in the beginning.
Yeah, it's all the stuff, we never learn, Eva. Who told you? I haven't been raised like that. And still up to today, there's so many people, when you go up to them and you really hug them, you go like, what's she doing? Do I know her? Obviously it's changed. A lot of people do these things these days, but a lot of people don't. So there's many simple practices, and sort of easy in a sense of that you really create that space and that freedom in yourself again. Because Kundalini yoga is amazing, but very often we go with these preconceptions in our head. And then we practice that like in the military. So and what can move within you if nothing? And it takes practice. We have to learn that. You can see that, we have this, we have this very easy exercise in Kundalini yoga. And people start and say, you just move from side to side and you breathe, and people go like, and it's super controlled. And that's not the body, that's the mind.
Just the way we're used to doing things. A teacher of mine recently mentioned to me that because I was for a long time actually really curious about how to really work with your emotions. Like people would often mention that you can work with them, that they can be tools that you can, for example, and I was like, okay, but how? Like in practice, when you're really in it, like, do you? And one thing that he mentioned to me was that in the same way that I think we were taught also in our training is that we have these sort of aspects of us, like we have these kind of bubbles of maybe of anger or of greed or of unresolved stuff or whatever that we can kind of pop into, and then some of them can be bigger and some of them can be smaller. And one way to maybe this is not so much about working with it, but maybe of resolving it is with a curiosity. So he was saying how if you just become like curious about it, and if you really kind of feel that the difference that it makes, how automatically things soften, and how automatically things move also.
Yeah.
And then the story gets untangled, and then you're left with almost just a little nugget probably, and then it can drop. But it's also that willingness actually also to drop it as well, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's also interesting. It's just, it's just interesting to watch. And if you feel, okay, I'm not ready to drop it, to allow that. I say, okay, I can't drop it, but at least we've met and we've made contact and we had a communication here, it's fine. Yeah. Because that creates what you say, the gentleness. And you need to touch stuff before you can drop it. You can't drop stuff which you don't want to touch in yourself. I mean, that doesn't work. Yeah. That's avoidance. Yeah. So I love the idea of the curiosity. Yeah. Just become curious with yourself. Like like really your most loving observer, and emotions are messengers, nothing more and nothing less. I mean, as we take them for what they are, then they lose, you lose this whole drama around emotions, either that you don't want to feel them, or you lose yourself in the emotion and you find it very hard to get out of the emotion again. And I love this picture, what you said about your friend, that have a curiosity. You say, hey, who are you? It's a beautiful picture to just contact them in this way, and I go like, oh God, I'm feeling this again. I remember a friend of mine who'd done, some spiritual work for some time, and she went just like, I don't want to think that anymore. I don't want to feel that anymore. It was so harsh, because I think you said that at the very beginning, like once we come to a certain kind of observer consciousness, life can get worse and not better necessarily, because we start picking on ourselves and seeing everything and think, oh my God, and then how to continue. So I think how to continue is really to embrace everything and to love everything about who you are. And curiosity is exactly this, curiosity is a kind of innocence. To say, hey, what is this? Let me find out. Yeah. Let me just find out more. That's beautiful. Very beautiful. And they do all carry a message. And they're sort of like our entry point. If you want to do work with your, let's say, shadow part or unresolved parts, the parts that essentially are part of you, but for now, for whatever reason, you find it or you struggle with embracing. That's the parts we're talking about. They're not bad parts, or they don't need to be sort of put in the corner. It's more like to realize they are part of you and they have a message to tell. And every part that comes, sort of you come out of separation with, for whatever reason they've been put into separation at one point where it made sense. They carry experiences for you which are valuable, and they carry a gift. This experience carry a gift. They've experienced something and they've mastered something and learned something which they would like to bring back, into the wholeness of who you are. So they can serve you. Yeah. And they wanted, this part of consciousness always wanted to serve you. It's part of your consciousness. Yeah. And it carried something for you as long as you couldn't consciously carry that. So, and emotions, they direct us to these parts of ourselves. If you go into high emotions, then you can be 100% sure there's a message. And you can ask, then we go, oh, what's the message? I'm not getting the message, The curiosity is, please tell me, what is it? We can always ask. We don't have to figure it out all with our minds. We can ask. They're very willing to deliver the message if we allow them to deliver the message. And if it's something strong for you or for anyone, which had a strong impact in this life or another lifetime, and you know and it's coming back, then maybe you need to talk to them several times, which is fine. But emotions are very, very powerful, but not in the sense of that we drown in our emotions. That is also an attachment. Because there are these people that find it difficult to access emotions, and then there are people that wallow in their emotions. They feel alive when it's emotionally intense. And to understand that's not the end of it, the emotional intensity. The message is beyond the emotion. And it comes from a part of you that has been a part of your consciousness that has been in separation, and that would like to come back into the light, meaning into your awareness, as an integrated part of who you are. And in that sense, they're beautiful messengers. And curiosity is exactly that. Like, imagine you expect a nice parcel, and every morning you run to the post box like, oh, has it arrived yet? I really want to receive it. Imagine we could, treat them like this.
Yeah, it just changes everything. It really just changes everything. And I think, personally, sometimes I would almost resist that change, because sometimes you just get fixated in that space and you kind of hold on to it because you have a right to be angry at that person or whatever it is, or to be resentful or jealous or this or that. And what would you be without that?
It gives you a strong sense of identity.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very easy to identify to your emotional state or your emotional body.
Exactly.
It's very strong.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it's almost associated a little bit with personality sometimes. It's like, well, that's just the way I am, and it's like, well, yeah. I wanted to quickly jump back. When we had this break in the middle, I realized I wanted to say, when you were speaking about the heart, that this practice that you once mentioned to me to do, to put your hand on your heart for a few minutes a day and just kind of ask yourself, connect, and just to see how am I doing today. I'm still doing it, and I still feel like it's something that's fundamental now, in fact, because there's been time, and I actually wanted to ask you another question, if you don't mind, around intuition. It's something that I'm just kind of exploring and asking different people around how they feel it in their body or what it is for them. But I noticed how some people are just maybe more generally in touch with just how they feel and how they're connected, and other people maybe take a bit more time to really just take a moment, like we were saying. And I realize I'm one of those people that I just don't always take the time to really notice how it is that I'm doing. And it's actually, if I just connect, if I just stop for a moment, and it just can take 3 minutes. Other people that I might suggest this to try is almost like to put on a stopwatch sometimes, because to ask and then to just put on 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, 10 minutes, and just to allow yourself to enter that space of listening. Because sometimes I feel like maybe we don't necessarily know of how long, or the first thing that comes, you think that's it. and then you write it down and you move on. It's like maybe there's something else. Maybe it's not just that. Or so I just wanted to mention that was such a beautiful thing that you suggested for me to do, and it's something that I think other people might say, well, there's so many suggestions like it. Maybe that was just the one that hit for me and it was perfect, you know. But I find it to be such a beautiful practice to take a moment and just to say like how is my heart, how's my soul, how am I deeply, whatever it is that resonates with you, whatever wording,
Yeah.
how am I doing today? Or if there's a question that you have that you ask, for me, I feel like answers always come. Yeah.
Yeah. You basically giving the keys, at least from my experience, you know. We all have intuition. That is really important to understand. I mean, if you're not connecting with it, it doesn't mean you don't have it or something. You know, it's something we're born with. And I guess we all know, even if we haven't practiced anything, these moments where there's this little voice sort of with a suggestion, maybe not, you know, so loud than other voices that kick in the, no, oh, no idea, you can't do this, and what are you thinking, and then, huh? These are always very loud. And we all know that voice. And very often that is the voice of intuition. Yeah. And that's why you say it's practice. Yeah. Usually, very often we don't listen to it, especially, you know, when we're stressed. Yeah, we go into automatic, we go into habit, even if it's painful. And but rather than that, because we already know it, than taking a moment to stop and reconsider. Yeah, we feel like we need to get stuff done. The pressure is so strong that we can't stand that. So we all know intuition, and like emotions, it's very natural to us. It's a way of communication from our consciousness, you know, that wants to speak to us. Yeah, and it speaks to us in certain ways which we haven't learned. So yes, so that's why it is important to practice just what you said, and it can be just 3 minutes, because otherwise our mind goes, I can't do that because I don't have time. I have to meditate like 3 hours, and then I have to do this and that, and then maybe I have intuition, maybe I receive something. And that's nonsense. That's just not true. Yeah? If you're not in a place in your life where you're in complete breakdown, depression, or maybe you need something else first before, maybe not. Yeah, but like if you have a normal life, it's just about this short moment. You say 3 minutes. Yeah, I would say even 1 minute, where you take that breath and you stop. And the moment you stop, you sort of stop this external movement. Yeah, then something can come through. That's the thing. And then often something comes through, but we devalue it, or we don't take it serious. We tell the intuition to sort of go off, like, no, that's not what I wanted as my intuition. You know what I mean? Then we have an idea what our intuition should be. And there's so many things how we're blocking. Yeah. And then we have an idea like, no, if it's intuition, it should be along this way, you know. And maybe it's something completely different. And then we dismiss it. We just say no.
It's like a self-domination. It's like we're dominating. I once said to somebody, it feels like there's a part of me that almost like dominates another part and doesn't, you know, it's almost like my ego dominates my soul, and it's like not letting it out, you know. And it sometimes would feel like
that's what we call control. That's not, I'm just not saying that. Exactly. I know that too, you know. Yeah. Most of us know that, yeah. That's the control. Yeah. And if you want to control intuition, guess what? That doesn't work. So it's really a much more practice of allowing what is already there than, I don't know, twisting us in every corner to finally find intuition. Yeah. We have it. We just have it. Everybody has it. And what I find is also really good practice, if you're not sure, like every day, just take a journal and write whatever comes. and you know, they call it automatic writing. You don't even stop, so your mind doesn't dictate what you're writing and which thought are not good enough for paper. Yeah. And what makes it even more interesting is if you write with your non-dominant hand. You will be amazed what you're going to write down. And that's all stuff you hold within yourself, or you receive from other parts of you, which, you know, which you have access to. You have access to all these parts of you in all dimensions of reality. It's really a question of calling them in. Yeah. And that's always possible. You can always ask, you can always call in help, you can connect to your intuition. It's a question of what do you go into resonance with. Yeah. Where do you connect? To what do you connect? And that might take some practice in the beginning, and the mind probably goes like, this is not true and that's nonsense, you know. Or it takes this as, oh, I had this intuition, I opened this big center in I don't know which place, yeah. and just takes this as an escape for doing the steps you need to do, you know. And there's so many superstition around intuition. It's just let's say a spiritual sense we have. I would call it like this. Yeah.
And
we all have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I quite liked how Caroline Mace mentioned how it's like a thing that we actually need for survival. You know, it's like a biological thing that we need for survival, just to know, well, this is going to work and that's not going to work, and this way I'll go and I'm going to, you know, whatever, this way I'll find the berries that are going to feed me, or whatever it is, you know. Yeah.
Yes. And you know what we need for survival, that just, it's something we've all been given. Take the world today, I think it's very, very obvious if we don't connect to our intuition, going back to exhaustion or confusion again, you just be completely confused in this world, because there's nothing you can hold on to. There's loads of information, and basically who shouts the hardest, that's the one people believe. So there's also no reference from what is true. You know, take the whole virus story. Whom do you believe? I mean, you can hear all opinions about that, all experts, and you will find your own bubble where you feel, yeah, okay, that really confirms what I'm believing about that. You know, if you you can on Facebook or whatever, you know, the friends you have, the things you follow, you will have your own bubble where you will be sort of fed back the things you want to believe. And if you change that, then you think, oh, maybe I have to believe something. So what is true? So that is really intuition, and it's absolutely necessary for survival. It goes from finding the berries to taking the next step in life. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's super important. Yeah.
And what is good for you in that moment as well, which, like, I think no one else can really tell. Even the greatest, you know, mentors and teachers are not really inside of your story or inside of your journey, and it could be that something, which I think is more and more these days, with how much access we have to everything, and it can be overwhelming. And it's just about, I remember someone said to me once that it's almost like there's a learning of, like, I think it was that my instinct wants to gather all the knowledge and then, like, kind of sift through what's the best thing, and my intuition just wants to pick up the right one and go, you know.
Exactly.
And it's like that transition actually has been a hard one, even for me, like just feeling like over and over noticing myself, oh, I'm doing that again, of like checking all the different options and all the, you know, it's like just pick the one that you feel right. And actually the less time I have, the better it is.
Exactly.
You know, then it's like it has to kick in. It's like it's gonna freaking work now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't think.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's a blessing.
Yeah. That's
because
it.
we all know that we overthink stuff completely. We overthink stuff, and intuition doesn't work like it's a visceral knowing. You just know it's right, and you need to do that. And maybe no one understands that, and we all have an experience of that. Everybody knows that. It's just, it's like a muscle. You need to train it, and you need to trust yourself more in what you receive. Yeah, because then we start guessing, you know, like, oh, is that really true? And maybe that, how do I know? And do I have to ask my teacher? And you know, instead of going with it, because the more you do that, the more you will just trust yourself. And what can happen? You make an experience, and that's great. And then you will adjust course, or you will understand. That's also important to honor, you know. That's why journaling is so great. Like you had a hunch on something, and somehow, okay, it was somehow there, and you followed your day, and then see how that really played out and how right you were. Yeah, just to trust your intuition more.
That's what I was going to say actually about that writing, because when I do that 3 minutes or whatever it is, it would blow my mind how it was so spot on for the day. The first few times I just listened, I just wrote it down. Later I was like, that is exactly what I needed that day. But it was something so simple, and it was like, it always would just blow my mind, you know. Yeah.
And that's really the new level of self-care. You know, I mean, we think of self-care, and of course that's also important, because we have all these dimensions, you know. Of course self-care is wellness and eating well and all that, and moving and taking rest in the day. All that is self-care, and that is super important. But this now is really a different level of self-care. Yeah. And I think that's really what is needed. We all need that. It's not so much a question, do I want spirituality in my life or not? I think we're really beyond that point. It doesn't matter how you call that. It doesn't need a label, but that's the level of self-care we need to access in whatever way we want to do this. Yeah, there is no right or wrong. So that we, like 100%, start trusting in ourselves. Yeah, we need to the self-care is really that we come back into a cohesion in ourselves. Yeah, because what we do is like, we think this, then we say something else, and then we act even different. Yeah. So that is so exhausting. Yeah. So how can we come back into this? And following intuition is really a key in that. Yeah, to find that cohesion.
Yeah. And I almost find for me that practice of just practicing that actually puts a few other things in check as well, because it stops certain like repetitive behaviors, or it kind of, you start noticing, oh, I'm doing that again, or, you know,
Yeah. And I find it really supports you to step out of habits.
Exactly, yeah.
It really does, you know. Because it's like building this new muscle who becomes stronger and stronger. Yeah, or like, let's say it becomes a bigger island, or whatever the picture is for you, you know. It's just more fun to spend space, you know, to be there, because you know about the strength of that, and you're not doubting this. So the other things can be there, but it's much easier to come back on course, whatever it is for you. Yeah, absolutely. That's a more indirect way to work, you know. So you don't just hit this and then you force yourself like, okay, I mustn't do that anymore. That doesn't work.
Or not
to strengthen this other muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about the healing rays, because you just quickly mentioned it, but I know that it's something that you offer. And it's something that, I mean, you really supported me last year with a few sessions, and for me it was beautiful, and really, really helpful, really supportive, and I just found that you held this. I mean, these are your gifts. Like, you hold the space in such a gentle, compassionate way, but with a real strength, and I find it to be quite beautiful session. So I don't know if you want to mention that as something, because it is something that you're offering, that you're doing.
Yes, I'm offering that. maybe let me start. We're also more and more offering that in our trainings.
Okay.
For people.
Yeah.
Because I find people hit a point where they're just with the practice, in the process, somehow they can't go further for whatever reason, because it's sort of a cross point, and they need some other impulse to be able to dissolve that within themselves, to take the next step. And I find the healing rays a really, really great modality, a healing modality, because healing is nothing else than coming back into cohesion, what we just talked about, you know, in the oneness of you, who you are. And to help you to take that next step. And what I also find amazing is that it in a way it's very precise. It will really sort of in a session bring you to that aspect of you that now is asking for your attention. Yeah. So it's not just blurry where we're going back into oneness somehow and then we're doing something and are we feeling better, which is beautiful as such, but it's very precise in sort of supporting you in your journey, in your and really, you know, in your soul journey, and your highest potential, you could say, so that's what I love about it, and just make you aware of just the next step, because that's all you need to know. The next thing that wants to open within you. And well, I'm not doing so much. What I'm basically doing and what the practice is to get out of the way, quite honestly. So this is not so much about myself, and the practice is, and also the training is, how can you open the channel? How can you open? How can you be a channel for this energy? To move through you. And it is a healing modality that is quite new. It has been channeled. It's a channeled healing modality also. It comes from the work of Ishtar, which I mentioned before, with the Ascended Masters, and who brought that to her as a healing modality for our times. Of course, there are many healing modalities, and I'm not saying that's the only one or the right one, but for sure it's a powerful one for our time. Because what you work with when you work with the healing rays, you work with a rays of consciousness, that rays of creativity, which carry, if you want, the principles of creation, the source principles of creation. So you work with a very high frequency from source. You work with source energy. When I talk about coming back into coherence, then basically I'm saying coming back into an alignment with that energy, which is also your energy, and it's also who you are. So we work with this. That is the healing rays. And in each session you work with channeled cards. You've experienced that, and which will very precisely reveal to us, I would say, me and you, the person that is in the session, what's the consciousness we need to work with, which part wants to come back into alignment for you now, what is it? So and then so you have this part, and before we work with the rays, we also work with the lovely prana, the pranic supporting, nourishing energy of Mother Earth, because we are not to open the bodies. We work on the chakra system. We open the chakras, and
so you do that for everybody? Because I remember in the beginning of the session you were like grounding, and I was like thinking, oh, you're grounding me, because I was like a little bit. And no, this is something you always do.
No, I open. Before I start the session, I sort of I ground myself. I open myself. I have a thing to do before I start the work. So that's what I'm doing before we start working. And And then, of course, okay, before we do you come with your intention for the session. Yes, it's very helpful. We've talked about that, to just ground us both into the space. Yeah. To really see, okay, here now, what's needed. Yeah. And so yes, so we work with pranic energy in the beginning, and then we work with this healing rays, which energy works through the whole chakra system and through the meridian system. And then in the end, we say a decree, which is really working with beliefs you hold. You could say attachments you hold, which are linked to karma. And also karma, again, is not a curse or anything. Karma, you can just call that energy, which at any given moment is not in alignment, which is not in coherence, which draws you out of yourself, which brings you into resistance. These parts. So it's nothing to fear or nothing bad. It's just a word for that energy. And that can be in alignment or not. And you create karma as soon as you're here on earth, because that's how we create. So it's just this law of action and reaction, and it can be in alignment or not. So you can have unresolved karma, and we all have that. We're not a bad person or have done something wrong. We all have that, because as creators we create, sometimes in alignment and sometimes not. And if it's not, it's just where the lesson is to bring it back into alignment. And that's what this is about. And we say this decree in the end to really sort of, I would say, call out, sort of make a statement, that we, as a conscious being and a light being, will now revoke that energy. So we're going to break with this. And we say that out loud to make it very clear. It's really a statement to the universe, you could say. And that's super, super powerful. So I actually, every time I do that, I know both sides. Obviously, I've received a lot of sessions during that training, but also other trainings I did to support the process. And I've given sessions. I can really see a big shift in people. And it's a shift in consciousness, which plays out on different levels. It can play out on the physical, that people who had pain feel better, in their physical body, or people feel all of a sudden I'm not so triggered by things anymore, or people come into my life, or people leave my life, or I'm finally able to make a decision in a certain part of my life which I wasn't able to, and I was postponing, or I didn't know how to handle that, or I feel a sense of direction, whatever it is for you, or I feel a joy coming back into my life, whatever it is working with, or I finally dare to create, do that thing I never dared to do, all kind of stuff. And that's beautiful to see. And I just find it very powerful, because it shifts things pretty quickly, I would say. I must be careful, if it's like a big topic, you might
of course,
need to work more with this. And I don't want to, I don't like, this promising teaching or promising healing, but what I see, it's a very powerful practice that really creates big shifts in consciousness in people. Is very, very supportive. It doesn't really matter if you do other practices or not, you can also just do that, and I've seen people really transform. And then, in return, it really gave me another way to practice yoga. So these things are always connected. Because what my experience is, when I started practicing yoga, and again, that's my experience, but I've seen it in people also. You open up this new space of consciousness, but you're feeling high on your own supply, but you don't really know what just happened or where you are. So it just feels good, and it might be new, and you go like, wow, I want more of this. But you're not precise, you don't know where you are. And the healing rays give you that precision, you know, also, like in the conscious space where you are, what you're working with. Yeah. And I've also done, like the last 3 years, sort of a shamanic training, and that became also very obvious to me that consciousness is not just one big blurb where I feel better, sort of something opens and I feel good. It's very precise. You need to know where you are. You know, it needs to be. You need to be very clear what you're working with and where you are in that space. You know? And that, and also what I've talked about earlier, this whole opening up to receiving. I've really learned that with the healing rays. And asking for help, which is readily available for us. Yeah, not just on the physical, like other people, but really, whatever it is for you, you know, with the masters, angels, or I don't know what you connect to, whatever you want to call in. Yeah, but you can call in help, and that's something I've learned. And I see also people who've sort of did healings, they're opening up more to these things. And I believe it's the time for this, you know, as well, we both said that several times. The times where someone from the outside tells you who you are and what you have to do, it's really over. We need to come into ourselves and our knowing. And I find this healing practice, very, very supportive in exactly that. And when you always have these points where you're stuck, and I find it always opens something up. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. Absolutely. And like you said a few times, the word supportive, which I've always just felt that to be like supportive and also transformative, I'd say. Like those are the two main words for me with this with that practice. With I don't know, with the sessions, yeah. But are you offering them one-to-one still, or just part of the training?
No, I'm offering them one-to-one, and I'm still doing them. I've gone back to doing them donation-based.
Oh wow!
Because I sincerely feel it's something we need right now. You know, they can support. You know, don't have to start a whole thing. You can just do like 1, 2, 3 sessions. You know, and they will support you wherever you are. Yeah, and I'm so grateful that I discovered them and they came into my life. And I would really love to make them available to as much people as I can. Yeah. So, and the amazing thing with the donations is really, Eva, what I've seen. You know, people have this idea, then I'm not. You know, once people do these practices, you develop a sense of appreciation and value for it. Yeah. And I've I didn't expect that. It was a big lesson for me. You know, some people donated so much. And that doesn't mean you have to, you know, that's not what I'm saying. It's very much like part of the healing is also to discover within yourself, within your means, what you have. What do you want to give value to? Yeah. I remember also in times where I didn't have a lot of money. That was actually in France in the Martinet, and I was there, and it was a really important week for me, and I was just invited. And I remember I scrapped up my last 100 euros or something and gave it as a donation to the place. And that, I think, was the most important moment of this whole week for my healing. Because it was such a deep appreciation of what had just happened. Yeah. And guess what? A lot of money came after. You know, you think like, oh my God. And yeah, so and everything is fine, you know, you give what you give, but I find it makes it really interesting also to offer this different kind of exchange.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also to get people into that mindset of, what is it worth for you?
Yes.
You know, this process that you are going through, or this commitment that you're making to yourself also, you know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay,
yes,
amazing.
people can contact me through the website heartfirstyoga.com or my email, I don't know. And
Perfect, 'cause I was going to
yeah, you
ask.
can book a
Yeah.
session. Yeah, I
Perfect.
offer them remote.
Okay.
And yeah.
Amazing. And I suppose, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to share with people. We've covered a lot.
Feel that I've talked a lot. I think people have heard enough.
We have, yeah.
No, I think it's good. I just want to invite people to really focus on what is unfolding, you know, and the beauty that is there, and to understand that has nothing to do with negating what is happening. It's a practice to choose where you put your energy, you know, and nourish that. Yeah, I can understand that you can go haywire and crazy in the times we're living in, and if you watch the news, yeah, it's just despair and confusion. And I know a lot of people, when I talk to them, they say, I don't know what to hold on anymore, but I really want to say, trust yourself, trust what is unfolding, and nourish the goodness in you, and this will nourish the goodness in all, you know. That's really what I want to say.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And just thank you for your time. I wanted to say this in the beginning. Yeah, I wanted to say this in the beginning, but I kind of, we kind of just ran into the chatting. But I remember, because I think the first time that we met was at Le Martinet when I was doing my level 1 and 2. And I
remember that very well, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember you actually gave me a tip about Japji once, because I think I did anyway. But I just remember, because we never really had too much of a mentoring like together, because I think we were in different groups. And but sometimes you would teach, or you would be, you know, obviously in that sort of public space. And it was not just me. I remember it was one or two people, but when you would laugh, it would be like just the whole, you would have this like beam of light that would just like radiate everywhere, you know, with this like real innocence. And we were always just like, wow, this like grace, but this joy. And I think you've shared so much of that here as well today. So whoever like didn't know you before got a piece of that as well, which I always find so like just enlightening. Yeah, it's really joyful speaking to you. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's always inspiring, and it's and so supportive. And so thank you for all of it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for starting this, and really all my blessings. I'm sure it's going to be good.
Thank you very much.